and welcome to our presentation on building online connections. As one of the vice principals in the school, this has been a goal that we've been working on for the last 2 or 3 years. Not only are we, teachers and subject experts in our areas of courses, but we also, as most teachers, we want to make sure that we have those really valuable and engaging relationships with our learners. And so we've been working really hard on making those connections from a distance. So without further ado, let's get this team sharing. Our first sharer is going to be, where's my mouse here? There we go. All right, is Miss Stephanie Ives. She's one of our current middle years teachers, and she's been having some success with class newsletters and also a middle years book club in online education. All right, Stephanie, take it away.
All right, Arlene, should we be able to see the slides right now?
Yes, I will share that. Sorry, I had that all set up before I went kaputs. There. How are we doing? Is that better, Steph?
Perfect. All right, so it is nice to have everybody here today. I currently have grades 6, 7, 8, 9 students in a range of subject areas. And so one of the things that we had students asking for this year at the DLC was an opportunity to do a middle years book club. Because the high school teachers did one earlier in the year and last year, and I think they're going to talk about that today as well. And we had some younger siblings who said, when can we do this? So we weren't sure at first how to approach it, mainly because some of those middle years kids don't necessarily have some of the digital citizenship skills to engage in an asynchronous format. So what we ended up doing is we invited all DLC students in grade 6 to 9 who wanted to participate. And the book that we decided on this time was A Fish in a Tree, which I highly recommend to absolutely anybody. Not only did the kids love it, I absolutely devoured it as well. But it was a book that was a high enough level that the grade 9 students could choose to use it for their novel study if they wanted to, but it was also accessible to the younger students. And I ended up with 10 initial students and 5 that followed through. Ironically, none of them ended up being my own students, which was actually kind of nice because it was an opportunity to build some other connections with students as well, who were doing courses with other teachers, and also for the kids to have an opportunity to interact with people who weren't necessarily in their own class. I had a few grade 6 students. I had one joining us actually who was currently in Vietnam. And so it was 2 in the morning when she'd join our meetings, as well as a couple of grade 8 students. And so we set it up fairly simply for the first go of things. We had an initial meeting, introductions. We were using Zoom at the time. How does Zoom work? What is this going to look like? And then we set up 3 discussions. And so each of those discussions was a certain section of the book. The kids had the dates right from the beginning, so they were able to make it, hopefully, if they were able to. And if they couldn't, that was okay. And I'd send out the questions ahead of time. So the questions that we were going to focus on, I sent 2 or 3 days ahead of time. And they seemed to appreciate that because they had an opportunity to think about what they wanted to talk about and not be so much on the spot. And I also gave them an opportunity to pass at any point if they wanted to not share for that particular question. I had a few quieter students who wanted to be part of the experience but didn't want to participate all of the time. And so that way they could just say pass. And I knew that they weren't getting missed, but that they were still able to have that choice. Something that I didn't do this time but would like to do next time that we do it, especially using Teams, for example, would be having some sort of message board where they could post ideas and things. But at middle years, I feel like it still needs to be pretty monitored very closely. So we did it synchronously, but I had some real go-getter kids that really wanted that opportunity to talk in the middle if they wanted to. But we did fine without it as well. And lots of the questions that I asked them were making personal connections. So in the story, Grandpa talks about wooden nickel days. What's an example when you've had a wooden nickel day? And it was a lot of fun. I laughed through most of the hour. The group of kids I had was a lot of fun. And they're kids I may teach in the future or I may not teach, but either way, we had a really wonderful time doing it. And then at the end, actually this week, I'm sending them out just a quick survey. What did they like? What are some things they'd like to see next time? What are some book ideas they have? And it's something I would definitely like to do again, because the biggest thing they said is we joined book club because we want to read for fun and talk about what we're reading. It was different than doing a standard novel study, but I was able to connect outcomes as well and provide that information to their teachers based on their understanding and based on their oral interaction in groups. So there's that nice balance for them. All right, Arlene, we're good to switch. The other piece I'm going to talk about, and I'm probably talking very quickly, but mainly because I like to talk and I want to keep to my time frame. But every week I send out a newsletter to my students, all of the students that I'm teaching in any context. And this has become something, I started it last year and have continued it this year with good response. I keep the format very consistent. So there are the exact same sections every week. What's in them changes. And if there isn't a Monday in the school week, or I had a term where I wasn't working Mondays, then the first school days when I send it out. So it becomes something families can look for. I always start with an introduction. So it's some sort of greeting. If there's anything urgent and important that I need them to know right now and want to make sure that they get in the forefront if they only read the top part. It could be something even as simple as, I hope everybody's been able to enjoy the nice weather lately. Here's something I've been doing. But just something to kind of hook them in and give it that personal touch. I've had some kids comment on the fact the newsletter was a nice reminder that there's a person on the other end of the computer. The next section is any upcoming dates. So this might be school dates, holidays, days that I'm away, so that they can always go back to that to see if I know I'm going to be away. Progress reports, any just special interest days. So International Human Rights Days, those kinds of things. Any dates that I want to draw their attention to. And that's just a bulleted list. And then I balance that out with some fun facts about me. Because the kids don't get to meet me right away, or some of them don't ever really see me in person, I'll include about 2 interesting things about myself. By this time in the year, it's a little bit hard not to repeat myself, but this could be anything from the fact that I'm right-handed to the fact that I grew up in Ontario, or what I was doing for Earth Day. And I get some replies from kids where they then share something back, which is really nice to learn about them too. I also share resources to check out. This is usually just 1 or 2 quick links, often from the monthly musts in the resource bank. So thank you, Melissa, for doing those. But just resources for families. So whether that's something, in our case, a DLC policy, a website they might want to check out for learning, information about a day that's coming up, whether Earth Day was a recent one. So I sent some an article about Earth Day activities they might want to do. Things that aren't directly connected to their courses, but would be connected to learning. There's always a fun fact in there, mainly just because I love fun facts. And it will be something I find. I'll include a source. So it could be about how many species of bacteria are in a tablespoon of soil. And it's just something to try to expand their thinking. And then I wrap up with a weekly challenge. And so this is something I want them to do. It's entirely optional. I get about 10 kids a week that will submit back to me what I ask for. Last week it was take a picture of something that you're doing outside. This week it was a drawing challenge. I gave them some things they needed to include in their drawing. And it's just a bit of that engagement piece to get them sending things back. In my context, I keep track of who participates each week. And then when report cards go out, I do a draw for a little prize that I mail out. But it's interesting to see the kids that participate every week. And some of the kids that kind of pop in and out. And for some kids, it's the only thing I hear from them in 2 weeks, but then I know at least that they're okay. They're on the other side of the computer. And I found that by sending the weekly newsletter out consistently on Mondays, I get a lot of replies to this email. I could have sent 3 emails to a parent before about something unrelated to the newsletter, and they'll reply to the newsletter. So it is a bit of a reminder and an invitation to engage. And so it's something that I have found really helpful for consistent communication. Also a reminder to them that I'm still here and I still want to know how things are going.
Thank you very much for sharing, Stephanie. I love the personal touch and your willingness to, be present in your class. You've hit on some really important pieces when it comes to successful online learning, where you're helping them to build those routines and schedules. And also, you certainly mentioned how important it is to get to know each other. So telling your students about what you're up to and inviting them to those, those challenges and ideas as well. So lots of good information there, and thank you so much for sharing. All right, our next guest teachers, I believe Karen is going to be speaking on behalf of Karen and Nicole in regards to a closed Instagram project that they did for one of their agriculture classes. All right, so go ahead, Karen.
Hello, friends. This is Karen. Nicole's on the other side there somewhere too to hop in if I need backup. So I'm going to be speaking to this project. So this is first of all, I'm the cow-calf, field crop, and equine 10, 20, 30 levels at the DLC. And this is an agriculture Instagram project. And with this, we are really wanting to encourage students to explore areas of agriculture that they are interested in. And this can be from making connections on their own farms to making connections to agriculture around the world. As one of the choices for their final project in the field crop and cow-calf courses, students have been given the choice to create a 100-day Instagram account. So that is what you're seeing on your screens right now, is just one of the snips of one of the accounts. So this 100 days is a reflection of the length of a semester. And the idea to use Instagram stems from the connection, familiarity, and accessibility many of our students have for this platform. This project, students are required to create an Instagram account. Again, like the 100 Days of Rancher. This is not their personal account. This needs to be a new account that they set up. They set it up and they follow our teacher page. We follow them back, and this gives them the control over the privacy of their account at that point. So if they want their family, parents, grandma, Uncle Bob, whoever they have that they want to follow this account, they are given that freedom. But most students keep it fairly contained to their parents and siblings. So from this project, then, they are required to post a photo a day. And they are either showing what they're doing for their daily work, documenting new skills that they're learning, making connections to futures in the field of agriculture with these photos. Then with the photos, their descriptions are required to answer the basic 5 W's. So who, what, when, where, why, and how is going on in this picture. And that is how this project will be graded at the end, is an overall description of the photo journal. So with this daily posting, then, this allows me as their teacher to make those personal comments, to like their photos, to ask questions about what's going on in each of the photos, and that way creating that connection and encouraging interaction with kids. So when I ask a question about maybe what's happening, like if for the photo that you're seeing, for example, like why did you feel like you needed to do this at this time? So then the student can come back to me and explain, what he observed in this picture and why they felt they needed to, doctor this cow. So yeah, that's about all of the details. Unless I left something out, Nicole, you can hop in.
No, you rocked it, Karen. Great job.
Thanks, Nicole.
There you go, teamwork right there. Thanks so much, Nicole and Karen. A couple points that I want to make you aware of is when you are using some of these types of social media platforms, it is important, like Karen said, to make sure that the students are protected and that there's privacy settings. And in most of your schools, as well as SunWest, we certainly have some guidelines when it comes to using these social media platforms in a safe and supervised way. So if you are embarking on an idea with this, I recommend you connecting with your school administrator on the best way to launch that type of idea. In addition, I really enjoyed, Karen, how you mentioned that this is a choice, an interest area for students to have the opportunity to share their own interest, whether it is, from a local farm perspective or connecting to the world. Thanks so much for sharing. All right, let's move on. All right, next up we have one of our new teachers, Kalia, and she is going to share with us how she uses the circle of courage with her upper elementary students. Go ahead, Kalia.
Hello. Hi, everybody. My name is Kalia Belinsky, and I am the grade 6 teacher at the SunWest Distance Learning Center. First and foremost, I would like to acknowledge that today I am speaking to you from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, which is on Treaty 6 territory, traditional homeland of the Métis. In my brief kind of 3 minutes, I am literally going to kind of speed through here how I use the circle of courage in order to connect with my students, especially at a distance. Now, as a new teacher at the DLC, one of the first things that I came into contact very quickly in this online world is how am I going to form a connection with my kids and get to know about them and their lives. And at the DLC, we see all the time that these students live all over the province and they have very exciting lives and lots of things going on, but yet they lack, or I shouldn't say lack, they do not have the opportunity to share with others and classmates what is going on outside of their lives, outside of the courses. So in order to do that, I employed quite quickly the use of the Circle of Courage model to have the students kind of share their lives on a platform during our weekly Zoom meetings, which is now team meetings. And the reason I say Circle of Courage model is the circle of courage that is being showed to you right now is based off of resources that I've collected and have been using for these meetings. These are resources that are research based from Manitoba that are based on healthy child development by encouraging students and children to reflect and be reflective on how they are using mastery, generosity, belonging, and independence in their own lives. So much as anything, this is a reflective and a sharing piece. And one way definitely that as a SunWest teacher, trying to incorporate more First Nations, Inuit, and Métis content and pedagogy into practice in an online environment. So you'll see here on this slide that this is an example of kind of what you would typically see on one of our meetings, class meetings. This is one that was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, probably, close to Christmas. So students are encouraged to share photos, anecdotes, also share kind of wow work or things that they have done very, very well and share it with me through email. And what ends up happening is it gets posted and shared for the next week for our class meeting. Then during our class meeting, students are encouraged to share and kind of explain to their classmates what they wanted to share at the class. You'll see here that we have I have a musician here who does a lot of performing and wanted to explain to her class how she is, this was before COVID-19, how she was going around her community and spreading joy by performing in local senior homes, as well as youth showcases. We even have a whole bunch of things like artistic talent that kids want to show how they're improving their own skills outside of coursework and how they're expanding their own knowledge. So there's a lot of different things. It becomes kind of like a bulletin board in a sense of student sharing. In a lot of situations, it can be a number of things in terms of which quality to focus on. One way to kind of break this down that I would like to in the future is to be focusing more on the Cree medicine wheel and the use of seasons. So each season being represented by a certain quadrant in the creation wheel and the virtue value wheel. So in this case, spring would be more kind of the relevant section that we would focus on just for this season. And as we work around the school year, focus on each season and the quality belonging or respectively belonging to it. This is really quick in a nutshell, but this is one visible and tangible way that we can deepen our own understanding of Indigenous worldview and bringing it into our classrooms or our online worlds, as well as expanding on PLC work and First Nations Inuit Métis integration of materials, which SunWest has been working to do, specifically in a PLC. In the future, it would be great to integrate this more and this reflective and sharing circle and teaching, as well as include different wheels that were shared in a day of learning in March, like the creation wheel, the virtue wheel, focusing more on the teachings and getting the resources to really expand upon those teachings in meaningful ways. If you have any questions or anything like that, I'm more than welcome to kind of share more. But with that being said, I'm going to keep it short and sweet, and thank you very much.
Fantastic, Leah. Thank you so much for taking the Circle of Courage model and, like you said, applying it in a very tangible and visual way that really helps us share those different types of worldviews that we can all authentically connect with. So we look forward to learning more from you, Kalia. And it looks like your students are loving this type of model that you have in your weekly class meetings. I like how you call them meetings. That's great. Thanks again. Okay, our next presenter is Mr. Pat Telfer, and he is going to be sharing how he is connecting with his students using Discord. This is a new platform that our school has been using this year. So Pat, please tell us more about what you've been up to.
Thanks, Arlene. So Discord is a service very similar to Teams. I like it a little bit better just because of some of the extra features that it has. On the next slide, there's actually a picture of my Discord server, and you can see in there, like, I have classes set up, I have a general area, I have a welcome area, and then I also have a meeting area up at the top there. It says Meet with Mr. T, where students can actually come in there and visit with me. So I've set this up. What I wanted was more than just a place to share class information. I wanted a place to connect with kids. My PGP goal this year was to create more connections with students. I was trying that with actually going to different locations to meet with students. Now that things have changed, I needed to kind of reflect and change that. So we tried Discord. There's lots of awesome things here. One of my favorite things about it is that it's where students already are. When I sent this information out to students, within about an hour, I had 6 kids already sign up. It was because they already had accounts. They're using this because they use it for gaming. Some of them didn't understand the connection between the gaming and school, and I've just been really refocusing and telling them this is not just a place for gaming, that this is a place where we can have those kind of conversations. One of the awesome things that I found that this whole server took me a while to set up. It's very finicky, and you can change a lot of little details about it. But my favorite thing about it was the Nightbot. So you can install robots or bots into the chat. Nightbot is a moderator that will, if a student uses foul language or anything inappropriate, it automatically mutes it. It warns them, and if it happens again, it'll mute them for a period of time, and you can set that period of time. And then if they keep violating, it'll eventually kick them out. And then you can have those conversations with kids too about why this is happening, why they can't use that kind of language as well. Being that I teach kind of nerdier subjects in computer science and information processing, some of my students are already there. They're trying to do this, but they don't have those digital citizenship skills yet, maybe to filter their language, or this is how I talk online when I'm gaming. Why isn't it appropriate here? And again, offers those kinds of conversations as well. On the next slide there, I have 2 resources that I used in order to set up my my server. One was a step-by-step guide. It's a document that was made by Discord for teachers. It's step-by-step. It tells you what to do and how to do it and why to do it. Then the following one was a video that was created, again, to use Discord in a classroom, but this one was by a user. And again, it was very detailed and very, very helpful in setting it up. But if this would be something I would use maybe in middle years, but in a high school setting more particularly. But if this is something that you would be interested in doing, because it takes a little bit of just knowledge of how to set it up, if you would want to do something like that in class, please let me know. I would be happy to help you set this up for you.
That's fantastic, Pat. If I could be the first one in your tutorial lesson, I know that this is a platform that I've been wanting to take the time to learn more about, so you can sign me up for that. Again, Pat, I think it's really important that you mentioned the bit about connecting with kids, and I know that is really important to you, as it is to many of us who became teachers. And this is just a different way of connecting with them. And I'm glad you also mentioned the Nightbot, right? There's always concern about how do we supervise, what kids are doing and saying online, and this has that piece built into it that builds on those digital citizenship skills. And again, I'm happy to hear that you mentioned how important it is for us always to be teaching those skills, but this is certainly an opportunity to help make our kids' digital citizenship skills even stronger. So thanks so much, Pat. Again, reach out to Pat if you're looking to learn more about Discord. All right. Next up, we have Allison, who is going to be presenting from an elementary perspective. Allison is our K-1-2 teacher at the DLC. I know that there are some of you online here who teach online now at that age level. So if you want to connect with her, outside of this particular webinar to learn more about what Allison does, I encourage you to do so. Okay, Allison, go ahead, please. Are you there, Allison? We can't quite hear you. No, we can't, Allison. Do you want to try again? Troubleshooting 1. Okay. Let me know, Allison, if you want. Oh, yes, we got you.
Great. Sorry about that.
No worries, Allison. Go ahead when you're ready.
All right. Well, this is the stuff I'm going to say today has actually been a lot of troubleshooting, because things are just different when you're doing it at home, or if you're doing it for the first time in a little while. So doing a reading aloud recording, that's my way of connecting. And I just finished one that I started on Friday and I sent out to my students last night. So there was a bit of learning, but hopefully you'll run into less problems with it if I have some suggestions. So there's lots of read alouds being done by famous people and celebrities, and that's great. But these little people don't know who many of those people are. They know you, though. You've, especially if you're not with the DLC, your students used to see you every day. And so seeing someone that they do know on a screen is probably really cool for them. Even my students who don't actually know me personally, I often get feedback from, and I already did this morning when I logged on to my email. People said, hey, that was great. Thanks for sending it. We watched it twice, or, different things like that. So so it's been appreciated. A pro about doing a recording as opposed to live is that their family or the student can view it at any point in time. So people are busy, maybe they just can't make a specific meeting time. a time of day, but they can still watch it whether it's a couple days later or just a couple minutes later than you send it out. There's a con, that's no commenting. You know, you're not getting that live connection with different with other kids. I know my families aren't as interested in that. Again, they don't have personal connections with each other. They just happen to be taking DLC courses. That would be different, probably in lots of other situations where these kids do know each other. You know, lots of them are friends and stuff like that. So in that case, maybe you would want to try something live over Teams. There's also no commenting on any videos made for kids on YouTube. So that's something to just remember as well. I don't think I'd want any commenting on either because I don't want to be policing it. So YouTube is my favorite for posting my videos, just for ease of use on the other end. Most people can figure out YouTube and you just click a link and it will open for them. So I have done YouTube Live as well. I researched a bit more into doing it myself. I would have to use the DLC account because you need to have a bunch of subscribers to be able to go live. I guess that kind of makes sense. But the great thing is it makes a recording and saves it for later, so people can watch it later as well, even if they're not watching it live. Sorry, I'm looking at stuff in a different order than I thought that I was reading. I think my fixes today didn't really go live. Sorry about that. I'm just seeing where you're reading anyway. I'll just keep talking, I guess. So when you're going to do a read aloud, you do need to prepare a bit. So make sure your phone, if you're going to use it, is charged up, or if you're using a laptop, you've got the charging cord there, because how annoying is it for it to shut down after you've recorded maybe 5 whole minutes and then it just goes off. It can take a lot of power. I also recommend reading the book first. Maybe you want to practice it out loud. There might be words that you'll stumble over, or there might be a word even in a book that you have. Maybe it's an older book and you're like, we don't say that anymore, or something like that. So maybe you want to have something ready to say about it, or maybe you just want to choose another book, things like that. So it is good to reread. And then make sure you're ready to go on camera. I did a great video last Friday. I had something in my teeth. Oh, go check your teeth first. I still shared it with everyone because I wasn't going to lose that work, but and I'm sure no one will even comment, but I was a bit embarrassed. And it is okay to take a test recording, or maybe you have to do it twice because you were just a bit freaked out at first. It kind of can be something to make something permanent that is going to go out there of yourself. It's different than teaching live in a class, but you can do it. Make sure that if you're using your phone, tip it to landscape mode so it's going side to side instead of up and down. Much better viewing on YouTube if your video is recorded that way. And yeah, while you're reading your book, correct yourself as you go, just as if you would in a regular class. You stumble, you just fix things. That's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. You should be you as if you were to your students regularly, because this is for them and that's who they know. That's who's watching it as well. I also take note to give extra time to show the pictures. Maybe you want to pause a little bit longer after reading each thing so that you can hold the book a little bit closer too, so that they have time to do that. I like to take my video in a couple parts just to make uploading faster, and I did kind of pan away. I didn't just do a read aloud. I was showing off some different things and talking about them related to the story before I actually started reading. Check out your video quality as well. That can make things take a long time. I tried forever to upload things, and then I tried again Saturday and it all went very snappy. There was no problem doing it over Wi-Fi, but there are recommendations to use a cord. You can plug your phone just into your computer with the charging cord. The USB end will just stick into a computer. Hopefully that will help. I use Camtasia to splice those bits together. And if you really hate your ums and ahs, you could take those out. That makes it a longer process though. So I'm an advocate for keeping it just natural like that anyway. I think I'm sort of done here. And so that's the end. If you want to see the video I made, let me know. Just give me a contact and I'll share it with you. And then you have something to go off of if you want.
Allison, maybe if you get a chance, you could pop one of your YouTube links in our chat.
Oh yes, I'll try to do that.
Awesome. So thank you so much. You know, you're so right. You guys are the celebrities for your teachers. You know, they want to see you and they miss you. And I think what Allison was also trying to say is it doesn't have to be perfect, right? It's just be you and be comfortable and authentic so that you can connect with your students. Thanks again for sharing lots of tips and tricks. Again, reach out to Allison DeHoop if you'd like to learn a little bit more about how she is pre-recording her stories for her children. Next, we have Kayla, and Kayla has been, and her ELA team has been leading a high school book club, and she's going to share a little bit about how this has been successful. Go ahead, Kayla.
Hey everyone, hope you're having a great day. Just to kind of follow up on Pat's presentation on Discord as well as Stephanie's on book club, I kind of blend the two together here. So the purpose of the DLC virtual book club, it started as a way to create a sense of community in our non-traditional school setting. Our students are hundreds of kilometers away from one another, so it allowed them to feel like they were in, you know, the same four walls of the classroom through this book club. It was also a way to create an extension of our current ELA courses. We don't currently offer a pre-AP like some schools do, so this was it gave the students an opportunity to, you know, be as extensive as they wanted through class discussion with their peers in a book club, as well as read literature that may have been grade levels above them. Another thing was that DLC teachers, it's really tough to make connections with those high school students because you don't see them all of the time. So this was a great way to connect with students in regards to, or with something we all love, so books. And then the last thing we can't forget, which I was a huge proponent of, is the snacks. We always did a final kind of video viewing and we had snacks there. We actually had a parent joke that it was a snack club with a book, so it was great. So how did we get to where we are with this high school book club? So we weren't the only English teachers that taught in the school, so the first thing we had to do was connect with them because we were going to allow students to use this as a novel for their choice novel studies in their classes. We wanted to offer a higher level novel, so then, you know, it wasn't a grade 10 level novel that they were using for a grade 12 class. So we chose novels that were a higher level. Where the novel we're using for next semester will be Indian Horse. So that's, you know, an ELA 830 option because it's Canadian literature as well as a higher reading level. So we also made the discussion accessible, just like Stephanie said in middle years. There are a lot of students who maybe don't feel comfortable, you know, answering off of the cuff. And I have ADHD, so I definitely don't like doing that. I like to prepare. So it's great to give them the options for questions and the bigger discussion items early so they could prepare for that. Back to Discord, just like Pat said, we use that as our communication method and they could pop in and chat about anything. There were a lot of dog pictures, a lot of memes, but it's also monitored and our IT department wanted us to use it and try it out and it worked really well. Another thing we did was any of those large guiding questions that we had, they always spurred other smaller discussions. So as long as they had prepared for those bigger discussions, we were kind of able to branch off and have different discussions and follow-up questions. And then lastly, all of our novel studies at our school, typically for the choice ones, have a compose and create component. So we offer the students an opportunity to complete an assignment created by us, the teachers running the book club. However, they were also able to use the novel in whatever course they were in and just do that assignment as well. So we kept the assessment practices the same as the compose and create assessment practices of our school and all of our ELA classes. So if we go to the next slide here, we've done this probably, it's 2 times now, and we're going to offer it a 3rd time, but this is some of the feedback that we've gotten. I see that the second one didn't really fit in the bubble there, but the 3rd one is a meme that was actually shared about The Book Thief, which is one we read last year, or in first semester, sorry, and showed the movie. So you can see they really enjoyed it. I know that if you have any questions about Discord, I can help you out there. And if you have any questions about resources and kind of questions that we posed, you can ask me as well, and we have resources for that. So.
Thank you very much, Kayla. Again, another example of how Discord is being used to try to connect with our high school students, because they sometimes are the ones a little bit more challenging, particularly in an online environment. And some of you who are continuing to teach high school students, this may be a challenge for you as well. Again, another great example of students able to share their personal interests, dogs and memes, and again, providing that opportunity of choice and student interest certainly supports our Pebble philosophy, and providing them an opportunity to learn and read, at different levels and a different interest. So wonderful ideas. Thank you so much for sharing, Kayla. Our next presenter is from a student support perspective. We have had student support teachers in our school for a few years now, and in most cases, we don't know what we would do without them. We're very thankful for their perspective. Emily is new to our school this year and has embraced online education and supporting her students, with big, big open arms. So I welcome Emily, if you want to share your perspective on how you support your students.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. So, do I just do request control if I want to move to the next slide? Sorry.
I'll do that for you.
Okay,
Emily.
sounds good. Thank you.
Yep, you betcha. I think we're there now.
Oh, perfect. Okay, sounds good. Okay, so a big part of my role for student support, we have these at the DLC. Typically, the students I see, they come to us when it's sort of like they see the DLC as sort of their last option. They feel like they maybe have exhausted all of their resources because they're across the province. So maybe have a difficult relation, maybe something happened at the school, or they feel unsafe and they have significant learning problems. They come to us for various reasons. So basically especially when the students come to me, it's kind of like this is the last resort. So the parents and the students are looking for that final help. So when I first got here, it was just a question, like, how do we do this? Because it's what the parents are asking for is a big job too, and it can be hard, especially in online. So the first thing I usually think of, so when I have these students that come to me, is I think of Maslow's hierarchy. So how do we provide our students with what they need? So so when I think of this hierarchy, I sort of take various steps to sort of figure out what exactly is a student need and how can I provide intervention, or even refer outside services to meet that need. So the first step I always do an intake interview with students and their parents. I work mostly with elementary students, so I usually do the intake interview, but our SST, I usually do the intake interview with the parents, but the SST I work with does it with the students. They're mostly high school though. So during this intake interview, I really take the time to really understand what the students' strengths, hobbies, and interests are, and also how to build a relationship with them. Because lots of times these students are very anxious. It can be quite difficult to build a relationship with them. So during that time, that intake, I sort of try to just learn a little bit about the student in that sense. And then after that, I set up sort of regular times I meet with them. I usually try to meet with students actually 3 times a week for 30 to 45-minute blocks, sometimes in groups, sometimes individually, just to and I usually though spend that first week just sort of building that rapport with them. Usually like how we would in our typical brick and mortar class. I feel like most of us can, maybe not most of us, but I know definitely when I was in the classroom, it felt like September was literally just building the rapport with students. So I usually, though, for me so far, I've been finding it to be about 1 week or so, just for that regular contact with them, for them to kind of trust and break down that barriers. From there, I also do assessment because I want to figuring out what that perfect instruction is, that perfect instruction for them, so that they can be at a level where they feel that success. And then from there, I usually just create a plan with the student and parents. So for example, I have a grade 3 student right now who doesn't know all their letter alphabet names. That's part of a goal that we have. So we try to just make it straight and simple, straight and straightforward. The next is we work towards that goal and plan, and then we always celebrate their success. And I like to show the students, depending on in different ways on how they've improved during their time where they're working with me. And then if a student's not following up on the goal, that's usually time for me to reflect on what is happening and maybe identify some possible problems for that. So that's sort of how, from a student supports perspective, how I sort of assess student needs. So then the next thing, another big part, is building that relationship with diverse learners. So I have a little bit of a counseling background, and sort of a counseling approach that really spoke to me when it comes to working with students is using something called a person-centered approach. So really there's kind of three main principles to take when you're using that approach. So that's basically like congruence, so that's being authentic and real. The next is being empathetic and unconditional positive regard. And so what I do because I am working with them through teams or teams, you don't really have that chance, that personal connection. So I really try to bring these factors into that relationship that I have with the student. And so when I think of like empathy, it's just really like, I think we can all attest to how students, and even us too, to really work when we want to build that relationship with a person, or when we want to work well with them. We always like to have that sense of feeling like the person empathized with us. So I try to bring that to my students. The next is congruence, authenticity, and realness. And part of that too is being real with the students, showing them who you are. And also too, part of that is that feedback as well. So it's not all just, of course, not everything's positive. We also have to be real in the feedback that we give them. Just like, for example, if they can't attain their goal. And then unconditional positive regard, I would just say it's just that just really accepting the student for who they are, and just believing and have the student feel that you believe in them. And then just some tips that I use to just sort of to do what I can to touch on these three aspects is, like I said, make them feel acceptable. The video conference regular and consistently with them. So being that a consistent face for them, empathize. And also too, I've been finding building relationships with parents have been a big piece as well, because oftentimes if the parent trusts me, I know the student's more likely to trust me as well. And the next thing is just set attainable goals. So making sure that it's reachable for our students. So yeah, those are just some things that I'm mindful about when I try to build that relationship with our students. So yeah, that's everything I have to share.
Thanks again, Emily, for taking the time to share your perspective. Again, it's certainly important that we're open to the different type of diversity that our students have, and I think you to be consistent and to believe in them. And I loved how you added the bit about building that trust with the parents. And I think especially in times like this, that trust with the parents becomes even more important. So thanks again, Emily. All right, next up we have Tracy Urich. She is one of our high school English teachers who has a passion about connecting with her students. And so I'm sure you'll hear all about that from her voice and her sharing and how she connects very regularly with her students online. Go ahead, Tracy.
Thanks, Arlene. Good afternoon, everybody. I do run a lot of online tutorials with my students, and one of the little things I didn't write up on any of my slides was the fact that I constantly reach out to my students to encourage that we do meet and that we talk about their math and we talk about their learning and we talk about how they do, what their processes look like and that kind of thing. So I think it's very important that, you know, that as a teacher, if this is a way that you want to engage with your students, that you know you have to be the one to reach out a lot to them. And you know, it doesn't just come easily for some of them. So some of the tools that I use are, I've listed there, Adobe, the whiteboard in Zoom, the whiteboard in Teams. I use Word and the drawing tool, SmartNote, and I've used the record feature in Teams and Zoom. The other thing I used to use was Explain Everything, but that I haven't used that one in a while. If you want to flip to the next slide, Arlene, please. I just wrote out these are almost just hints for online tutorials, because I could go on and talk forever, but here are some things, you know, just in general, I can tell you about doing online tutorials. And one is constantly check to see that the student is understanding what you're saying or what you're trying to get across. So I'm constantly asking them if I'm making sense. You know, the first few times usually that I have tutorials with the kids, it takes them a while for them to feel comfortable telling me that, no, I need to say something different or explain it in a different way. Second thing, ask lots of questions that they can answer and give lots of positive feedback. Within the first few minutes of talking to them, I can usually know what their math skills are like. So then I just gauge my questions accordingly so that I can, you know, make them feel that they are able to answer things and that it's not just a one-way conversation. One thing I learned very quickly to get kids to do the online tutorials is to reassure them that they don't need a webcam. Many of our students don't want to be on a webcam or don't want to be on the video. So as soon as I usually tell kids that, they're way more likely to want to do online tutorials. Lots of times you know, if it's not working, so for example, there's some sort of a tech issue, I'll say to the kids, have your phone on speaker at the same time as you can see my screen on whatever Zoom or Teams, and we'll do it that way, because lots of times we have tech issues and we just have to make the best of what we've got. The first tutorial is always the one that I find takes the most time. So if I wanted to talk about one tiny little thing, I'm going to schedule an hour to be in a tutorial with a kid. And that's usually because it takes a while for them to figure out how to get all of their stuff organized on their side in terms of tech, and it will be some troubleshooting on my side. So the first one's the worst, and then usually after that, they can go quite quickly. Another thing I do is I tell them, you know, other than writing or jotting down a few tiny things, I tell them I will screenshot what I write. And if Arlene can if you can go to the 2 slides ahead, Arlene, here's an example. Yep, there you go. You'll see. It's not the prettiest of things, but anything we talk about, I screenshot for them, and then I will send it in an email. And lots of times before I send it, I will say to them, you know, is there anything I should write on here that's going to make this make more sense to you once I send it? And you'll notice I use lots of color, and it's in my handwriting from my mouse or my pen, which was another thing I wanted to say. You know, it's not always going to look really, really pretty, but it shows them that we're authentic on the other side of a screen. If you want to flip back, Arlene, please. One more. Perfect. So again, to tell them they're going to get the screenshots really helps in terms of, you know, them being able to pay attention and not be overwhelmed by trying to write down what you're saying and then missing the kind of the teaching that's going on. Another thing I've had a lot of success with is, you know, when they want help with something, I'll ask them to send me their work or a screenshot or a picture of the work that they've done on a particular question or a concept. I'll ask them to send that to me so that I can bring it up on my screen to share with them. And that way I know that the kids have attempted whatever it might be, you know, whether it's an assignment or something. So that way, and it will also give me the ability to have their writing on the screen to go from. So if you want to go to the next slide, Arlene. Thank you. Another thing is I always encourage the parent to be present. You know, I'll say to the student, or because I always, when I email, I tend to email the parent and the student always. So I'll say to them, you know, parents should be there just so that the parent knows exactly what's going on, you know, what the feel of the tutorial is. And then sometimes the parents can ask a few questions that their kids might not ask, or can offer some explanation. And it's a little bit more comfortable for the student to be there as well when the parent is present. I also usually will tell the kids, you know, I'll tell my students that they're to expect a link. And if they don't get one, you know, if I say, okay, our online tutorial is going to be today at 2, if you haven't received the link by 5 to 2, please make sure you email me or you give me a call, because then I've messed up. So I let them know that in advance. I told you about sending their picture, and I also indicated that the online tutorials work best when the students have attempted whatever work, you know, necessary work first. A lot of times students will just want me to teach them the entire concepts, you know, just in a tutorial. But I really encourage them to try first so that we can go from what they know. And I try to make them feel as though they know a lot more than they really think. I can, just one other tiny little thing is I can usually fit in a day, if I'm, you know, answering and doing tutorials, I can usually only do about 5, maybe 6 in a day, because it does take you, usually I would set aside 45 minutes to spend with a student in an online tutorial. That's good, Arlene.
Fantastic. Thank you again, Tracy, for sharing some tips and tricks. And I think it's helpful that you've given us a little bit of like what tools work for you, particularly in math, because that one sometimes can be a little bit trickier. So thank you for sharing some of those online tools that are all accessible to us here in SunWest. And it looks like most of you in our meeting today are in SunWest. And I think it's also important that you be proactive and be the reacher outer, I think is what Tracy was also trying to say. And because you're building those new routines now, everybody, you know, just keep at it, keep encouraging them to reach out for help. All right, last but not least, we have Mr. Jim Cates, and he is going to share his experiences about meeting and making relationships with his middle year students, and he's going to share some of his fabulous ideas, including the fridge as one of them. Go ahead, Mr. Cates.
Okay, well, I think you should switch off that picture of me staring off into the distance. This is the end of year 8 actually for online, and so I've tried a lot of things over these years, making connections with kids. We make a lot of video that isn't instructional. It's just silly stuff meant to connect with kids and let them know we are human beings, as opposed to just somebody marking an assignment on the other end. I did a weekly postcard for a couple of years. And then we got to the homeroom page, which is a gathering place for students. I noticed that thing is showing a little bit weird there right now, Arlene. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this is the homeroom page. Could you just go up to the top of that, Arlene? So on this page, this is a place to showcase some student achievement. This young fella here, Stan, had done really well at music festivals, so we had a picture of him with his certificates. This page exists on Moodle. It looks like a class, but it's not a class, and it's just a gathering place for students. So here we are, showing Stan, showing off his certificates. And if you go down a little farther there, Arlene, you can see that we were able to put up a YouTube video of him playing And also on this page, I do a weekly Zoom with the kids, and I've been doing that for about a year and a half now. And of course, we're switching to Teams, but it's just a video conferencing. And so these are actually talking points I can use as we get together on a Monday morning. I've got a separate session for grade 7s, and then one for grade 8s and one for grade 9s. And those are just ways of connecting and just, feeling responsible toward the class, sharing things. Kids can toot their own horns, or we can toot their horn for them, like we did with Stan here. It's a chance to be silly. It's also a chance to set some goals for the week. And so that's why we do this meeting. But as far as showcasing student achievement, that's what the fridge is for. So eventually Stan, who just did this recently, his stuff will go onto the fridge. And that's just a little farther below. Now, I'm not sure how that's going to show up for us. So this is something called ThingLink. And I'm not sure. Oh, okay, there we go. So the fridge is, I guess it's HTML. I'm not sure of the exact platform for this. I just try to come up with ideas and have other people try to do them for me. Jody, exactly, Arlene. So Jody actually did the filming for this. And we did this several years back. And so there I am with the fridge. And then we had to add Mr. Stinson later when he and I started working together regularly as grade 7, 8, and 9 partners. And so she actually filmed him separately in the studio and then just had him peeking out from behind it. But each one of those so-called magnets on the fridge is some kind of student work or something that they wanted to share with us. I mean, we have one kid that works with her bunny all the time, right? So she had to send a picture of it. And what else we got on the fridge there? Okay, this student was in a heritage fair, and she actually, the guy in the middle is the guy who I guess designed the Saskatchewan flag. So she got to meet him, and she wanted to share that with us. So she sent that along. There's a little blue arrow down at the bottom there, Arlene, if you can see that. That's actually a brief clip of a girl showing us, well, she was a barrel racer, and she just won her first saddle in that event. You could actually click on that, Arlene, and see what happens. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. It's a very short little ride.
I'm a little nervous about my internet, Mr. Cates,
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie.
Well,
Yeah.
we'll give up on it. The clip is very short. It's like 10 seconds or whatever it takes to get around 3 barrels. No, that's okay. We can come off of that. At any rate, if you go up to some of the top ones at the very top of the fridge, you will see maybe over to the right there a little bit. There's a poster a kid did for an assignment. And there's another one right beside it to the right as well. So there's lots of things that can be shared on the fridge. And one thing we noticed about this is that when we put something new up on the fridge, I often will send an email out to all the kids saying, we got some new fridge items. And of course, the kid who wants to see it most is the kid who made it or whose picture it is. And you can actually see that because the program I'm using for this provides analytics, and it shows how many hits there are on each of those little pictures or contributions on the fridge. So that's something we've been using for about 3 to 4 years to connect with kids. And I think we're way over time, Arlene, so I probably better turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cates. I'm just going to get back to our presentation here. Okay, where did it go? All right, and that takes us to the end. Thank you very much, Mr. Cates, for sharing your ways of connecting with your students. I loved how you've provided a really creative and engaging way to toot their horn or help them toot their own horn, and most importantly, to help them set those weekly goals, which is really important. So certainly thank you for that. And just as we wrap up, everybody, just a couple things I want to leave you to think about is you can hear in our teachers who have experience they have experienced some lumps and bumps for sure. And that's okay. And we're still lumping and bumping along, even though this is what we do all the time. So those of you who are just learning, stick to it, and reach out for some help. Secondly, make sure you be present, stay connected with your students. That's so important. And then finally, making sure that whatever ways you're choosing to connect with your students, to ensure that you're using, proper privacy and security settings. And if you're unsure about some of that, just connect with your school-based admin, for some advice for those types of things. Thank you very much, everybody. I will be following up with this by email with this presentation to share with you all. And in that, I'll also include the email contacts for all of our guests that we're able to share today. So wonderful. Thanks, DLC teachers, and thanks, audience. Have a wonderful day, and reach out if you need some support. Take care all.